You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we're hiding in the shadows in Fab Facts.
It's all kicking off on the moon in the randomizer.
This is the voice of Connor Flanagan.
He sounds nothing like that, but it's all coming up in Pod 228.
I was close enough, of the Jerry Anderson Podcast!
He's from Belfast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Jerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Well, hello there.
Well, hello.
You've been a very busy bunny, Richard James, haven't you?
I have. That's why I'm sitting in the cupboard in my garage at about 9:15 on a Friday night.
Yes, it's a very late night recording because it's mostly Richard's fault because he's doing a show. Do you want to do a plug for your show?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been rehearsing all week for A Sherlock Carol, which is a cross, would you believe, between Sherlock Holmes and A Christmas Carol.
I can't believe
how Christmassy can you get? Yeah. So if you fancy coming to see it at the Marylebone Theatre in London between the 18th of November and the 7th of January, get online, book your tickets. Should be fun.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, you can book tickets for my one-man show, which is never taking place ever. No, don't
is that
worry.
Sponsored by Brill Cream? Oh, no, it wouldn't be, would it? No, sorry.
Oh God! I didn't realise how sharp you could be on a Friday night.
I've been saving it up all week. You see?
Yes.
Trouble.
Anyway, I'm the totally hirsute Jamie Anderson.
Well, that must make me the bald. Richard, that's not. Well, anyway, I'm Richard James.
And he's got a full head of hair.
Yeah, that's right. Bald.
And later on, we'll be joined by Chris Dale, also known as the Randomizer, and he'll be doing the Randomizer, picking a random episode of a random Jerry Anderson show and watching it for your listening pleasure. It's a strange thing, that, isn't it? Watching it for somebody's listening pleasure, but I suppose that's
right.
That's actually quite a good summary. We should have said that before. In the last 227 pods, possibly.
Well, yeah. I mean, we know it works because people love it.
They do. Well, they love that, and they also love all the things between this moment now and that moment then. Would you like to list those things in the sandwich filling of this podcast?
Okay, but I'm going to list them in ascending order of what people, I think, love most in the podcast.
So this is completely subjective. You've done no research here. There's no focus group or anything?
No. So in ascending order, Fab Facts is coming up in just a moment.
It's so strange you'd pick that first. You're already putting the ass in ascending, aren't you?
Then tying for next place, I think it would be news from the Jerry Anderson universe. Mm-hmm. And the first part, I believe, of your interview, Jamie, with Connor Flanagan.
It is, yes.
Yes. I'm trying not to be rude here, you see.
Too late. Failing miserably.
Yeah, okay. All right. But of course, top of the heap every week are the wonderful emails, Facebook postings and Twitterings of our lovely podsterons. That's you at home, our wonderful listeners, who've been emailing us at Jerry Anderson. No, podcast at Jerry Anderson.
Every time.
I'm sorry.com.
It is late.
They've been hashtagging us, hashtag Jerry Anderson on Twitter, and commenting on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/posterons.
Good, well done. I mean, other than the fact that you were incredibly rude and dismissive to pretty much everybody on the podcast.
Yeah.
Great
Didn't
job.
really think that through, did I?
No. Anyway, I'm very much looking forward to seeing your show and giving an honest review of that.
Uh-oh.
So before we get on to anything ruder, shall we do the least favourite bit of the show for everyone? According to you, anyway.
I mean, that'll be a pleasure, won't it?
Well, it certainly will for me, because it's this week's Fab Facts.
Here it comes.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Yes, it's the bottom feeder in terms of what?
Oh, I see.
In terms of parts of the podcast, it's the
No. I was being
it's the
cruel.
dregs. It's the
come on.
It's the scum that sort of sits at the bottom, and
it really isn't.
And I know everybody wishes it wasn't there, but it's just part of the furniture now. It's Fab Facts because I've got a book of Fab Facts. Here it is. There was a little flip and slap. And I'm going to flick through the pages for you very shortly. Richard's going to shout fab. It'll stop me flicking at a random page, and the page that I happen upon will hopefully contain a fab fact, which I will do my best to deliver to you in an interesting-ish fashion. How does that sound?
You say hopefully. Yeah.
And I said ish as well. I've really put a lot of caveats here. Anyway, let's get on with this. Here is the flick.
Fab!
Ooh. Oh, there's a familiar face.
Oh?
A bespectacled Anderson favourite. You'll find out more very shortly. Now, Richard, who would you say was the greatest villain in the Anderson universe? Don't say me.
But apart from you, the greatest villain? Well, it has to be the Hood, surely.
It's an interesting choice, perhaps, yes. I mean, there's plenty you could choose from.
Of course. You said the greatest, though, so I just gave you one.
Well, I mean, there is a certain well-known guest alien character in Space Precinct, perhaps, who was pretty villainous.
Oh, yes. Of course, it's Halloween coming up as well. It'll be time for me to post my Kamada memes on Twitter, won't it?
Of course, Enil Kamada, played by the one and only Richard N. James in Space Precinct. But one of the most popular of all Anderson villains is, without a doubt, actually, Captain Black.
Oh, sure.
Now, of course, we've got two versions to choose from. We've got the classic from 1967, and we've got the 2005 one. Both are great. But for this fab fact, we're looking at the Super Marionation Captain Black from the original Captain Scarlet and the Mr. On series of 67. So, did you, Richard James, know that Christine Glanville, our bespectacled Anderson favourite, once claimed in an interview that Captain Black was originally supposed to have been killed off at the end of the show's first episode, as in permanently killed off, never to appear. Finito.
Yes.
All over.
Done.
Termine.
Yes, we get it.
All that. So he would never appear again. Now, according to Christine, it was only after she'd made the puppet up to look gaunt and pallid that Dad decided to keep him as a regular baddie.
Oh, okay.
Now, we should stress again that these are Christine's words only. We do not have any other definitive proof from other parties that this was ever actually on the cards. The version of the pilot script that we have seen, which is the one that we've discussed before, the idea of Scarlet being a mechanical man. Do you remember? Some time ago?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
It doesn't actually feature Black dying or anything too different from the eventual first episode of the series. However, if you look at the finished first episode and keep Christine's claim in mind, it doesn't take much imagination to suppose that maybe Captain Black was originally meant to be aboard the Spectrum helicopter that was hijacked by the Mysterons and then destroyed after colliding with the London Carview Tower, is it really? I mean, it sort of makes sense that could be a thing. One thing, however, that maybe does support Christine's claim is that in episodes 2 and 3 of Captain Scarlet, that being Winged Assassin and Big Ben Strikes Again, Captain Black only makes brief, silent cameo appearances.
Right.
So that's interesting, isn't it? In each story, yes, there's best paid as well.
No lines to learn.
In each story, he's shown watching a vehicle that the Mysterons are about to take over, but he doesn't get directly involved with that takeover himself, almost as if these cameos were quick insert shots filmed for episodes that were never originally meant to feature him.
Interesting.
So just put there to remind viewers that he's still part of the series. It's not until episode 4, that's Manhunt, that Spectrum first become aware that Black is up to no good on Earth. And from then on, he's more involved with the action, usually murdering people, of course, in order for them to be resurrected as Mysteron agents. I should say recreated rather than resurrected.
Sure.
Just before somebody writes in and complains. However, in several of the episodes in which he does appear, all he actually does is show up and tell another Mysteron agent, "You know what you must do." And then he disappears. That was all right, wasn't it? That was quite a good Captain Black.
Pretty good.
Thank you.
I was impressed.
No, thank you. Again, this perhaps points to the possibility that maybe the show's format wasn't initially devised with the idea of keeping Captain Black around. If that was the case, then obviously the decision to retain him must have occurred quite early in production. But regardless of what exactly happened and when regarding Black's role, it's still quite interesting to consider how different the show might have been without that star villain.
Absolutely.
So you'd still have the Mysterons as the show's main villains, but obviously non-corporeal. But obviously Captain Black adds a more personal and physical touch of horror to the show than just having a non-corporeal alien race.
Yes.
You've also got various spin-off media such as TV21, which positioned Captain Black more as Scarlet's arch enemy in a way that the TV series didn't quite go for. Ooh, there's a
Hello.
Captain Black fan in the background there barking about this. But that had a huge impact on how the character was later presented in the CGI show. So, Podsterons, what are your thoughts? Could you imagine Captain Scarlet without Captain Black? And, perhaps most importantly of all, do you have any more evidence to support Christine's claim that he might not have been intended to be a regular character? If you do, drop us a line. Or even if you don't drop us a line, that's fine. Podcast@jerryanderson.com. If you can see anything else about the way the titles are put together or the voicing. I mean, here's a thought. So, deceased Captain Black, voiced by Donald Gray, who played Colonel White. Isn't it a bit weird to have the leader of the goodies and the lead baddie character played by the same voice artist who had such a distinctive voice? Do you think that could have been a late signing? Is that a bit of potential evidence I've just found from the depths of my mind?
That could be, couldn't it?
I think so. I'm giving myself a very small Super Mario Nation pat on the back for that.
It's interesting. It's a slight lapse, if you don't mind me saying, of judgment. It's bleedingly obvious that Captain Black should be the main villain. Surely, from his very
you say
earliest
that now
appearances.
from watching
I
it.
suppose so. Actually, what would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? Maybe you'd approach it like this if you were doing it these days and had multiple series. At the beginning of every new series, you wouldn't know who the next Captain Black was, as it were.
No, and well, that fits very much
So
in
you'd
with
have
Dad's
a guest
idea.
villain.
Do you remember he
Yeah.
wanted to basically have a really sort of high-profile main character and then kill him off halfway
Kill them off.
through the series so that you never know who's going to survive.
That's it.
So maybe that would have been a great thing. But there you go.
Interesting.
Podsterons, let us know what you think. Is it possible that Scarlet was meant to never have Captain Black as a recurring character? We'd love to know your thoughts. Drop us an email or tweet us and all the usual things. But I suppose that probably brings us quite neatly to the end of this week's
Captain Black Fact!
You could have just had Black Fact. Why did you have to have
suppose so.
Captain Black
Well,
Fact?
I wanted to be specific about it, that's why.
Good.
Well, you really drilled down.
You should have had
That's okay.
his full name in that case. No, don't
I
bother
didn't have
with
time
that.
to cram it all in. Now, listen, Jamie, the good thing is
Yes.
that now that we've got Fab Facts out the way,
Yes. Things can only get
it
better.
just gets... Exactly, yeah, that's right.
yes.
No, I'm
How
joking.
very
of course.
1997 of you.
Now, talking about things only getting better, let's dive into our email bag because, I mean, it still astounds me. What is this, Pod 228?
Well, it feels like Pod 1228, I think, today,
okay.
but yes.
Well, let's imagine that on average we get maybe half a dozen. We actually get many more, but let's say half a dozen emails that I read out every episode, every podcast.
Yep.
So what's 6 times 228?
About 1,500, is it? Something like that?
There you go. That's 1,500 emails, and they're just the ones I've read out since we started.
Goodness me.
yet
I'm just going to
people-
check the
Yeah.
the maths on that, because that
Okay,
was very
yeah.
quick, late
Yeah,
night
yeah, no.
maths.
But people are still getting in touch.
1,368. 1,368. That's,
And they're still at it. For example,
I know.
Pen Quiller got in touch to say, hi, Jamie and
Hey,
Richard.
Pen.
I got a week behind on my podcasts due to holes, so I've only just heard Pod 224.
Oh.
Yes. Now, this was when we were discussing what might be the best scene ever from any episode of any Anderson series.
Yes.
She suggests the best scene ever has to be the landing of the Fireflash in the Thunderbirds pilot episode, Trapped in the Sky.
Is a good
the
choice.
climax brings together a great script, tense acting, amazing special effects from Derek Medding's crew, dramatic editing, and tense music from Barry Gray to give us not just the best scene from any Jerry Anderson series, but from any TV series of the time or since.
Oof, that is a bold
Isn't
claim,
it?
Pen.
Isn't it? But I bet you'd stand by it.
She's welcome
Of
to
course.
stand by it. I think it's a great claim. I think I'd certainly put it. Oh, I don't know. Top 20 or 30.
Yeah.
Another disagreeing
Hello.
dog there. Top 20 or 30
Yeah,
TV
TV
moments
moment.
of the last 60 years.
Yeah, of course you
I
would.
think that's a fair thing to say.
Chris Bird got in touch. Remember, fairly recently, a few weeks ago, we were talking about Supercar on Ice. Do you remember that?
Yes, we were. I remember very vividly, in fact.
At some venue or other. Do you remember where it was?
Yes, at some venue, although I don't remember it that vividly that I remember the venue. Wembley, somewhere? No, I don't know.
It may have been. But Chris Bird says, hi guys, yes, I was there. My story was that I entered a colouring competition in my regular comic, I can't remember which, but the picture was a supercar, and I coloured it in, but with a purple sky. You see, I was and always have been colourblind, but my parents said, send it in anyway. Sure enough, I won tickets to see the show, yes, at Wembley, featuring Supercar, and I remember it well. They invited a couple of children from the front row to ride in Supercar for a lap of the ice. Unfortunately, I was not one of the lucky ones. He says there's still a chance I have a copy of the show programme in my collection, but they're all in boxes in my loft, so I'm not sure when I can check that out. If I do find it, I'll let you know, of course. Yes, please, Chris, that would be great.
Oh, please do.
He says, for an 11-year-old me, it was very exciting to see the real Supercar, and that is virtually the only thing I remember from the entire show. Other shows suitable for an ice version, says Chris? Well, for me it has to be Stingray. The Wembley Panto on ice often featured underwater scenes in UV light, and Stingray would be perfect. I loved all the Anderson shows, and I still do, and even in my youth, I tried exploding some of my Airfix models on camera in my back garden. It must have been incredible times making the shows. Best wishes from Chris Bird. Isn't that a lovely story?
That is lovely. Thanks, Chris. And amazing that we can track down people who were there through the blooming podcast. Brilliant.
That's right. Yeah. Do let us know if you've ever blown up anything in your garden as well, and what your parents' reaction was to that.
Yes. Yeah, preferably something Anderson related.
Yeah, Matic Escovari got in touch to say, hello guys, I don't know if this has been asked before, but it just came to my mind after Jamie mentioned Wallace and Gromit in the latest pod. Since there have been lots of Thunderbirds-influenced moments in that series, would it be possible to get the creator himself, Nick Park, on the podcast?
We have sent a couple of requests to Nick Park's office and have yet to receive a reply, positive or negative.
Yeah, fair enough.
So we'll keep punting away there. But I think, Nick Park, Dave Sproxton, anyone on the Aardman side will be fascinating to have a chat to.
He also says, Richard, I propose a challenge for you. I don't think you've attempted to do this yet, so here we go. When you do the that was the news bit, try to do it with the words in reverse order.
Oh.
Right. Okay, I'll give it a shot. FAB from Finland, and that's from Matty. We've also heard from Chris Turner. Dear Jamie, Richard and Chris, I've just been listening to Jamie's interview with Chris Bentley in Pod 226, where the subject of the Secret Service came up. Jamie put forward his theory, which I think he's mentioned before, that he thinks that Jerry had a sort of subconscious, self-destructive approach to the show, and that the move to the hybrid of puppets mixed with live action was an attempt to edge the puppets out. And there was also the feeling that by this stage, Jerry was pretty fed up with the puppets and desperately wanted to move on. Well, says Chris, hear me out on this, but I'd like to suggest that the Secret Service was actually an essential transition from puppets to live action, a toe in the water, so to speak. In the Secret Service, Jerry and the team showed that they could move on from the very caricatured style of puppets in Fireball, Stingray, and even Thunderbirds to produce not only more realistic and correctly proportioned figures, but they now reached the stage where they could make a puppet that was so realistic it could be intercut with a real actor. It's almost as if they were saying, look, we've pushed super marination as far as it can go, we can't take it any further. So the next natural step for the team was to produce a fully live action show with real actors. Thanks for all you're doing. Keep up the good work. And that's from Chris Turner. That's interesting.
Well, Chris,
isn't it?
I mean, I would say we don't even have to agree to disagree there. I think
Sure.
I'm going to disagree to disagree.
Okay.
Because I think those are two sides of the same coin in many ways, aren't they?
Yeah.
I agree. A great stepping stone and showing we can do this, and I want to do this with live action. But I just feel quite strongly that there must have been a sense of this isn't following the formula of what we've done that's been so successful, and then it was beyond risky.
It was true.
So many elements of that show. The lead character writing something specifically for Stanley Unwin, losing so much of the tech, losing so much of the action sequences than the model stuff, which has become so popular, losing the merchandising side. All those things must have somehow felt to him, ooh, should we be doing these? I don't know. Anyway, we'll never know for sure. Even if he was still around, we wouldn't have got an answer to that. He would have said, "Oh, I don't think that's true," but I don't know.
Yeah. But it was a Jerry Anderson show, quite unlike any other Jerry Anderson show that had come before it, and there must have been a reason.
Or since, really. I mean, the biggest outlier along the same lines is Dick Spanner, and that was a real kind of, for the hell of it show in many ways, particularly given the budget and the what it was made for slot wise. So interesting. Thanks, Chris.
Interesting. Just a couple more from Mark Perkins. First of all, he says, "Good morning, Podcats," which I quite like. I was out for a run listening to the latest podcast when I heard that Jerry was upset to find phones had been given a name in some of the Stingray spin-off material. And for the rest of my run, I racked my brain to think what it was. I had an idea he'd been given the surname Sheridan, but couldn't remember his first name. I was pretty sure it was mentioned in a Stingray annual, and sure enough, I found it. Turns out his name was George. No wonder everyone called him Phones.
Absolutely, much better.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and finally, here's an interesting one for you, Jamie. Got an email from Marty, who says, "Hey there, I just stumbled upon jerryanderson.co.uk and wondered if you'd consider selling it. It seems to fit the bill for what I'm currently looking for. If you aren't willing to consider selling it, no worries, I completely understand. In that case, I'll be happy just to be a fan. Hope to hear from you soon, Marty." Over to you.
Thanks, but no thanks, Marty.
That's a funny one, isn't it? We get a lot of spam. That one just caught my eye.
That was anyway, a lovely bit of spam, that one.
Yeah. All for now. But remember, send your emails in to podcast@jerryanderson.com and I might even read it out next week.
Or you might not.
Or I might not. That's true.
No guarantees with this podcast of anything.
That's true. Yep.
Especially the quality and content.
Thanks.
All right, ouch. Anyway,
sorry.
Look, can you just stop being so rude for a moment?
Yes.
Because I've got some Jerry Anderson news for you.
Now that's what we're looking forward to.
Then let's dive in. It's
Sorry. You've got to say it all. What's the matter?
No, it's just because you were busy making funny noises. I mean, we'll keep this in. So,
obviously.
That's fine. Anyway, it's the Jerry Anderson news.
News. I mean, that wasn't the best we've ever done it. But
no,
go on.
it was. But it's raw. It's it's authentic, as they say.
That's what we do. Yeah.
Goodness me. Yes, I've got some Jerry Anderson news for you. This week, on Friday, the 28th of October, it's a very happy birthday to Fireball XL5 that turns 60 years old on Friday.
Can you believe it? Yeah.
Well, I can. And there's a huge amount of love out there for Fireball XL5. In fact, I've just been this week at a TV market in Cannes in the south of France doing some work down there.
Have you?
Yeah. And when I got my taxi back to the airport to find that my plane was cancelled, I shared the ride with a very, very nice man who lives in Vancouver. It turns out, very quick into our discussion, that he's a huge fan of Fireball XL5.
No,
so,
really?
Yeah.
Did you say, do you know I had that Fireball XL5 in the back the other day?
No, not the driver of the taxi, the guy I was sharing the ride with.
Oh, I see.
From the market. Anyway, look.
I thought there was a bit of a coincidence.
Sorry, I didn't explain myself very clearly.
You bear an uncanny resemblance to the son of Jerry Anderson. Did you know I'm a big fan of Fireball XL5?
Your head's as shiny as Robert the Robot's. Anyway, no. This is all very XL5 centric. This news, okay? So here we go with some XL5 news. Now, have you seen this very evening we've recorded? Network on Air have tweeted about a very, very special anniversary restoration with new colorizations, a previously lost episode, and much more, streaming for free for one night only at watch.networkonair.com. That's on Friday the 28th of October, 6:50 p.m. UK time for a 7 p.m. start. Chris Dale has been working on this, as has Chris Thompson. I may even have contributed to something here as well.
Yes, I thought you might. I think I heard it earlier.
Did you?
I think I might have done. Go on.
Sorry, you weren't supposed to hear anything earlier. So it's a lovely thing. So there's a colorized episode of Fireball XL5. There's Planet 4-6 in standard black and white, but in HD, because that's the first episode. So you're watching it almost exactly 60 years after the original broadcast.
Wow.
But there's also a colorized episode of Four Feather Falls. So Four Feather Falls will be seen that night for the first ever time in color.
Lovely.
Which is rather lovely. And then the Sun Temple, another episode of Fireball XL5 colorized there. Plus you've got You've Never Seen This, episode 6 of that series that Dad made. So it's a real Jerry Anderson fest.
Great.
And it's all for free. Just go to watch.networkonair.com and register there, and you can watch along, and it'll be all rather lovely. So there you go. Now, we've already spoken last week and the week before, I think, about our XL5 60th anniversary comic anthology. Well, that is shipping this week. So on Monday this week, Lee Sullivan and I will be at the warehouse signing the special editions, packaging them up, ready for those of you who've ordered, which is sold out now. So if you missed it, please don't try and find one. They are gone. Mm-hmm. And then they will be shipping from Tuesday, possibly Wednesday this week. So we hope that lots of you, especially in the UK, will have them in time for the 60th anniversary. And those outside the UK won't have to wait very long for them either. It's a beauty. There's a 17-page crossover story featuring Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet and Stingray. It's awesome. It's a lovely book, and yeah, there's so much love there for XL5. It's so nice to package something up in this way where you can kind of relive your comic XL5 fantasy all over again.
Yeah.
Also for Fireball XL5, and its 60th anniversary, Cloud of a Billion Lights, the mini album on Flame vinyl, limited edition of 1,000 worldwide, which is also shipping this week. So that's exciting. But if you're not looking to spend any cash, and I completely understand if you're not, then we've also got a free gift for you on our YouTube channel launching this Friday, slightly ahead of the network watch along, so you don't have to miss that. You can get in the mood for it. I won't give anything away, but it's a lovely little thing that'll take you right back.
Oh,
how's that?
That sounds lovely.
And finally, those of you who've been... Actually, it's not finally. I don't know why I'm saying finally. I've got more things. Those of you who've been very patiently waiting for the concert CD soundtrack and the DVD Blu-ray, well, the CD will be coming to you this week, and the Blu-ray and DVD will be shipping next week.
Well done.
So
well
finally we've got there. I'm so sorry for the delays. As I mentioned on a previous podcast, we massively underestimated the difficulty, overestimated how easy it was going to be, depending on your perspective.
Sure.
But we are finally there. It's out in the world. And it's also, thanks to our friends at Network, going to be available more broadly, which I'm very pleased about because it's a lovely thing and it should be. But those of you who've pre-ordered, you should get yours first. We'll be doing everything we can to get them to you first. And yes, I'm just thrilled. So you're going to be able to watch it for the first time or rewatch it and relive all that lovely music. It's a very emotional thing. So
yeah, lovely. Do you know? I mean, what I do. What we now late October. What I do when it arrived, I'd wrap it up. I put it to one side, and when I put my Christmas tree up, I put it under the tree and wait for Christmas.
Would you?
I really would.
Gosh,
yeah,
you're so much more patient than I. I'm going to rip mine open and put it on when it arrives.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right, fair enough.
There you go.
Don't tell me how it ends.
And weren't you there? I'll tell you how it ends with a hangover and COVID for me.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So
whoops.
I hope you fare better with the DVD and Blu-ray. Now, another pre-order that's been a long time coming was the 1612 Micro Eagles and the Eagle Launchpad. Lots of people have been waiting patiently. I mean, I think that went on pre-order 18 months ago.
Gosh.
Poor 1612 have been plagued by supply chain problems. Not the worst supply chain problems out of all the suppliers, I must say, but pretty bad. They've had some real terrible luck, but finally they're here. And we've got about 40 or 50 Micro Eagles still left in stock. We probably won't be getting any more, though. So if you do want to grab those, then it's a good time to grab them now. There's loads more good stuff going on in the background, and we've got some other stuff coming up. But that's so much. I feel like we should let Fireball XL5 breathe and revel in its 60th anniversary glory. So that means that is now the end of this week's Jerry Anderson News.
News that was that. News that was that. Oh.
Right.
I think that's right. I really had... Well, that was from... That was,
yes, that's right.
That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
There you go. That's Matty's request.
The way you sang it, though, made you sound a bit drunk.
Well, I was doubtful. I was actually having to sort of picture the words in the air above me as I sang it, and then sort of do it backwards. I should have just written it down.
Yeah, you should have. But picture in the air above you, that's a great tip. Is that an acting thing?
I suppose it must be, yeah.
God, you're so smart.
Well, now I'd like to know, on the back of that news, do you remember the first ever episode of Fireball XL5 that you can watch on Network's Night In on Friday night? Were you there the first time? Do you have any memory of watching it the first time, that very first episode 60 years ago? And will you be watching it on Friday? Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing?
Well, I hope there will be quite a few people, actually, who might be watching it. Yeah, why not? I mean,
sure.
People are going to be sort of, 64, 65, 66 now?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit older. There's absolutely, why won't they be watching it?
Yeah. Let us know. That would be a lovely thing. Let us know if you'll be sitting down to watch it again, almost 60 years from the day that you first watched it. That's quite romantic. I like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, if you're on Facebook, you can join our wonderful Facebook Podders Podcast official listeners group. They have a lot of fun there. Very nice, supportive and welcoming community. They post pictures of their cosplay and their merch and their latest model builds. And they just generally post their thoughts, not only about Gerry Anderson, but also life in general. Steve Bushell says, why did my work colleague look at me weirdly when I burst out laughing when he said, I've left some gubbins on your desk? And I replied, do you have clammy ears? He looked blank, so obviously doesn't listen or hasn't caught up yet. This should be the secret phrase to spot a fellow podster on. That's a great idea. Have you ever used a phrase from the podcast to someone who doesn't listen and then thought, oh, he won't know what on earth I'm talking about? Let us know.
I might start doing it.
Yeah, that's right. Steve Guttridge. Out of interest, how far behind are the episodes on the Gerry Anderson Randomizer podcast compared to the episodes featured on the Gerry Anderson podcast? Well, luckily, Chris Dale was on hand to say that his Randomizer podcast is 83 weeks behind the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Gosh, amazing.
There you go. Stu then asked, Chris, is there any danger of running out of episodes within the next 2 years of the Randomizer? And Chris said, no chance. There's content to run the Randomizer until pod 560-ish. So there's another 6 and a bit years to go.
Wow. I mean, it's a sad but an amazing thought to get to that level, isn't it? I mean,
I should be just about 60 by then.
What so?
Well, I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
No, it's not crazy at all. Nick Briggs is busy podcasting for Big Finish and he's 61.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, he's very good at it, man. James
so
Charles
are
Munro.
you, Richard James. So are you.
James Munro says, I re-listened to Brains is Dead today and noticed a nice little touch. Thunderbirds fans might recall Parker and Carano having a difference of opinion when they met back in The Mighty Atom. But here, when things are getting serious, Parker is all, lead the way, old son. All animosity forgotten. Nice to see them pulling together like that.
Yes. Isn't it nice? Isn't it sweet?
It's a chance, isn't it? These sort of reissues and revisits to these older stories to revisit and slightly reimagine the old characters, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. We're not
while staying faithful, of course, to the original.
Yeah, and I think that's what people have found. They are extremely faithful. But, I mean, you know, if you could go to the ends of the earth, excuse me, you go to the ends of the earth to try and find somebody who does an absolutely pitch perfect imitation of every single character.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is about that.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's about extending the storytelling and just growing the world. So that's what we've done.
That's right. And this is the only way it can be done, isn't it? You know, if you want new content, well, we've got to use new actors. That's just the sad way it is, isn't it? Yeah. Paul Main has posted, I really enjoyed the recent 4-part interview with Chris Bentley and was particularly excited to hear that we may be seeing a space precinct, The Vault, at some point in the future. Chris informed us that this would be possible thanks to his extensive behind-the-scenes access during the making of the show, and I understand that there will be a large number of props, models, costumes, toys and collectibles, etc. making an appearance in the book. However, to date, I have not yet been approached by Chris to ask permission to feature the world's most unique item of Space Precinct memorabilia, of which I am the proud owner in the book. That's the Officer Orin underpants that Paul won at the live podcast in Birmingham.
It was me thinking, what on earth is he talking about? And then I suddenly remembered the photo.
Yeah. He says they are truly one of a kind and the only known example in the world, perhaps deserving of a chapter in its own right. And if he asks really nicely, I may offer to model them. Maybe the centre spread of the book or a pull-out poster for the wall. Chris, he says, I await the call.
Gosh, well,
yeah.
I mean, we should just back things up and say that Chris said maybe that could possibly potentially be a thing that would happen if there was sufficient interest and a publisher wanted to do it. So maybe there were so many caveats. It was like, nice idea though, Paul.
Yeah, but maybe not put the pants on quite yet.
Well, no, keep them on.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, okay, fine. There we are. All for now. But if you're online, if you're on Facebook and you just fancy a nice place to hang out and chat all things Gerry Anderson, then the podcast official listeners group is the place to be.
Yeah. Great statement. I fully agree and endorse this thing you've said.
Excellent. Hey, thanks for that.
That's all right.
There's a first.
Thank you. Yes. Another first here on the Jerry Anderson podcast is this week's interviewee, Richard.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to know about him?
Yes.
That's a good answer. Well, the guest this week is Conor Flanagan, and Conor is a Belfast-based comic book artist, best known to ANDA fans for drawing two things: Space Precinct Reloaded, and most recently, New Captain Scarlet, Operation Sabre, which is sadly now sold out. Conor gives us his insight into creating the world of Spectrum on paper and in panels this week. So here is Conor for part 1 of 2.
I'm Conor Flanagan, and I am the comic book artist for Captain Scarlet, Operation Sabre.
I mean, there's lots more that you do beyond that, Conor, I'm sure, in your world, but that's, I guess, the thing of particular note for Anderson fans. And if you have not yet got your copy of Operation Sabre and you're listening to this, then we're very close to selling out the first print run. I can say that now, which hopefully will make you smile, Conor. So do grab one, and I'm sure you'll see by the end of this, or hear by the end of this, how passionate Conor is about not just New Captain Scarlet, but other Anderson stuff. So don't let me down, Conor. Now I've said that. You say you're the artist for Sabre. That was quite a long project. For those who don't know, this is a new Captain Scarlet continuation from the 2005 series. Is picking up where that series left off. How long have you been involved in doing that and other Anderson comic stuff?
Yeah, it's been quite a long process, quite a long journey for me, and probably for everyone else involved. Actually, it really, I mean, my involvement with Anderson Entertainment really started when I became involved working on Space Precinct Reloaded. That stretches back to 2018. Which was really a bit of a proving ground for me. I threw everything in the kitchen sink at that one, and but it was definitely a learning process because I'd really been out of the drawing scene for quite some time. But if I fast forward to Captain Scarlet, really, all the proving had been done on Space Precinct. So when I went into it, I went in with a renewed sense of vigor and also a lot more assuredness. Also, a lot more desire to obviously always improve, always evolve. So one of the things I was very, very keen to do on New Captain Scarlet was to colour that as well. Yeah, which I knew would help me evolve and improve and just generally grow as an artist. But as I say, doing all of those tasks in between working essentially a full-time job. I work at Forbidden Planet Belfast comic book store, so squeezing I think I became more squeezing the job in around the comic than the other way about. But if there were early mornings parked up sitting in the car trying to get a bit of work done, especially in the early days of nice. NCS, the comic book, it was on paper. I was working still, pencils, inks on paper, so wherever I could get a bit of drawing time in, that's essentially what I did. But as I moved on into the digital process, obviously that changed things in a big way. Got myself a rather nifty drawing tablet, which nice. Has allowed for just generally a much cleaner approach to things, a lot more efficient, and I've seen my work improve tenfold through that. So
yeah, investing in yourself and your craft, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, it wouldn't ordinarily take that length of time to produce a book like that. But as I say, not ordinary circumstances, but obviously very appreciative that I was allowed to go and do that. So as I go forward with other projects, it's obvious that it'll be a lot quicker and a lot more efficient. So.
Time to focus down. Well, I did say that you were dedicated to that, and I think the image of you sat in your car early mornings,
not driving in that because you can't do that.
I was assuming you were parked up, but that's reassuring to know. If any police are listening, no, Conor was definitely parked up.
A lot.
Well, but there's a nice kind of cottage industry dedicated vibe to that, which is really, really nice. But I'm glad you're going to be able to spend some more time on stuff going forward, whatever those things might be. But before we get into your kind of awareness of Anderson stuff generally, obviously there's a point at which you become involved with this, and that connects back to someone who many of our listeners will know. So how did this all happen, and how did you first get that involvement, Connor?
Yeah, well, I have to highlight as well. It's pretty huge for me. It'd be huge for anybody. When you have that dream of working on an IP that's famous, essentially. But very specifically for me, as a child, that was my dream, to work in comics. And for whatever reason, I got sidetracked to some degree, and I kind of put that behind me. So when someone walks through your door one day, or essentially, in this case, Chris Thompson walks into your place of work one day and offers you an opportunity, in this case it was Space Priest Reloaded, it changes your life in a big, big way, and I wasn't for a second going to allow that to fall. I was going to make sure and run with that the best that I could. So as I say, I threw everything in the kitchen sink at that one. So I'll be forever grateful to him. It just we've become firm friends. He and Andrew Clements as well, firm friends. Very, very a big shared interest in the Anderson stuff. So and obviously broader than that. But Chris Thompson, hero. What a guy.
He's brilliant, Chris. Don't talk to me about his hair, Connor. That's very unfair to mention the hair when you're talking to a baldy. No, it's fine. Well, as I say to Chris quite often, the late Denise Breyer, who played Zelda in Terrorhawks, she loved his hair. She would any time she saw me, she would ask after Chris, "Where's that lovely chap with wonderful hair, beautiful hair he's got?" Oh, she was obsessed. Anyway, moving on from Chris Thompson's hair, the whole thing of you having a dream of working in comic books, and then perhaps that being sidelined or waylaid for a bit, but then grabbing it by the horns, it fits in very nicely for me with the whole kind of Anderson ethos of inspirational, aspirational stuff. So I'm hoping we can hook that back to your maybe childhood experiences of Anderson. So, when was your first Anderson exposure, and what was it?
My first Anderson exposure. So I've been thinking on this, and it goes back to, I think I was about 3 or 4 years old, and what I can recall, weirdly enough, are the opening credits of Captain Scarlet. I suspect because they were quite haunting, but in a direct contrast to that, and I'm not sure. I remember a small 4x3 television screen, as we all probably had, little portable TV, and for some reason I attribute to this also the end credits of Dukes of Hazzard. I don't know if they were on directly after each other or what, but those two images stick in my head, and so that's about 3 or 4 years old. But so I lived in Armagh when I was younger, and that was a particular house I remember specifically, and directly linked to that, I remember, and I think I told you the story before, how we'd pulled into an old garage somewhere in Armagh, and it was a rickety old kind of garage, at least from the eyes of a child, that's what it seemed, and it was oily and it was dirty and it was all of these things. But the one thing that caught my eye, and really shouldn't have been there, but it was there for some reason, where it was a rack of Terrorhawks figures, pegged and hanging. And that's where I got my first action figure, and it was Sergeant Major Zero. So that was quite cool, which I had that figure for years, until I unceremoniously decided, as children do, I wondered what was inside it. So I think I cracked it like an egg to get in there. So I don't know why I did that, but yeah. I was very disappointed when I got inside, I can assure you. But yeah, so
not as cool as the outside by a long way.
So they're the earliest memories, but I suppose people today, certainly with the younger generation, probably don't realize how lucky they have it, in the sense of they can access these things very quickly, because something like Terrorhawks, essentially, it's sort of from my point of view, as did a lot of things, faded away. They couldn't really be accessed, and unless you were very, very lucky, to come across it on some sort of repeat, or find a videotape or something like it, which I consequently did. I found a Terrorhawks videotape when I was 20 at a St. George's Market, they call it, in Belfast. and that just flooding back to me. But that's jumping ahead slightly because obviously in the early 90s there was the big relaunch of Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, Stingray, all of those things, which were massively huge impact on me, particularly Thunderbirds. I remember, I'd had exposure to them through a couple of videotapes. I had a Terrahawks videotape and I had a Thunderbirds videotape, but they were mashed together episodes into movies. I think Thunderbirds in Outer Space was one of them. I can't really recall.
That's it. Yeah, the Super Space Theatre stuff.
Yeah, and I fell in love with the Sun Probe story and the Rick O'Shea stories. They were just absolutely superb. But it didn't prepare me. It's weird, because when I finally saw the episodes on TV with the opening credits as they should be and the end credits as they should be, it was like lightning, and obviously like the Thunderbirds lightning as well. But it just, there was nothing like it. That first episode with the Fire Flash, I was hooked, instantly hooked.
It is a great first episode because so many shows these days you need 2 or 3 or 4 episodes to get into them. Whereas I think that's one of very few examples where the moment you start with that episode, you are in. I hear it all the time.
Yeah, but it's also that culmination. It's I think your dad made a lot of shows, and lightning struck a number of times. It's a very rare thing when music, puppetry in this case, actors, all of these things come together to make something really special. And nobody sets out to make something bad. Nobody sets out to make something mediocre. But it's not very easy to set out to make something that is so memorable and influential and special. And
absolutely.
A lot of these shows just hit the nail on the head every time. So, so those are my earliest memories, and obviously the impact of those was huge, especially going through school for me, because essentially what happened, every single project that I did was Gerry Anderson related. Essentially, my GCSEs and my A-levels, I made puppets. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did a dissertation on puppetry for my A-level, which got into the Best of Northern Ireland exhibitions that went around at one point. For my GCSEs, I made a singular puppet. It was semi-based on Captain Sisko from Deep Space Nine. My other big love was Star Trek. And then for my A-levels, I made 2 puppets based on 2 friends, old friends of mine, Shane Kerr and Martin McKeown. And it was very cool. So it was sort of based around a camping theme. They had to sort of tie it in some way to an existing theme that we had running, but I just used any excuse that I could to push the Gerry Anderson end in. I think, because obviously then it led on to, I moved into sort of the video end of things, and I think in the back of my mind I always thought, I'd like to make those kinds of shows or something. The allure of film and video is the other big draw, but I think somewhere along the line I learned that focus is key in these things, and I think the very early dream was comic books. So if I'd have kept that focus, maybe I'd have come to this a little bit earlier, but the allure of all that other stuff kind of drew me along,
I think when you get to something, it's the right time, whether you know it or not. So, sometimes these things culminate that way. So you kind of, you had a bit of video, a bit of toy, a bit of telly, a bit of physical interest in the puppetry, which you carried through, and then obviously the comics side. So early 90s, I guess it was the Thunderbirds comics that were coming out. Were you getting those? Was that part of your kind of gestation into becoming fascinated there?
Absolutely, it was. So 1991, I think, was the Thunderbirds comic. Might have been later, but so I was becoming exposed to artists like Mike Noble, Frank Bellamy, Steve Kite. Obviously, they're generationally slightly different artists, but and very different in styles as well, in ways. But those were massive to me, and that kind of that ran on. I think I would have been, not sure what age I was then, probably about 9 or 10 or something like that, 8, 9, 10, and then that ran on most through my teenage years, actually. So I was still collecting those comics right up to, I don't know, maybe 16, 17 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I stuck with them, and I still have them to this day. So they were massive. There was a particular story, actually, in the Thunderbirds comic, Visitor from Space. I loved that one, specifically because in the show we don't see anything sort of science fiction-esque in terms of a setup. Maybe Attack of the Alligators to some degree, but I love this idea. And I have to say, I wouldn't really want to have seen it on screen. I like the idea that it was grounded and it was disaster sort of orientated, but it was interesting reading the comics and seeing a giant alien, or the Thunderbird boys encountering a giant alien. It was very, very different. So that was one that stuck out in my head particularly. Of course, drawn by Frank Bellamy. It was absolutely gorgeous to look at, so it was particularly nice.
Yeah, the wider possibilities of the comics, some people find them a bit jarring, but if you kind of treat them as their own entity,
I think the other one, the Steve Kite, I think it's Steve Kite story, where it's obviously they started off doing adaptions of the episodes, which were just absolutely gorgeous, absolutely beautiful adaptions, but I think later on it combined with the Captain Scarlet comic and the Joe 90 comic, and they all came into one, and there was a story in that where I think it was like a Lost Island scenario, and Thunderbird 2 maybe crashing on or Thunderbird 1 crashing on a mysterious island and encountering dinosaurs, which I thought was quite nice as well. Silly, but fun. The kind of thing that I like. So yeah, that was
part of the joy of all these things is to push the boundaries.
Yeah, I have to say as well. Obviously, I was also being exposed to other things around the time. In 92, 93 was the death of Superman from DC Comics. I don't know anyone who wasn't, didn't know about it. Certainly if you didn't get to read it or see it at the time, Dan Jurgens' art on that just seared into my brain. And then also there's the Breaking of the Bat and the Nightfall storyline as well, Batman. And then of course, really, really massively so, X-Men by Jim Lee. That was huge. I think that animated series was on around that time as well, so those are sort of more US influences, but they were the other things I was reading around the time.
Okay. So a lot sort of bleeding into your young mind.
Filling my brain up.
Well, absolutely. And making you who you are today, Connor. Some more of Connor next week, finishing off more recollections of all things comic, all things New Scarlet, and reflections on, well, actually not reflections, what are they before they've happened? Premonitions? of future things? I don't know. Anticipatory reflections, something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, as I said, go on.
I think I might have met Connor. I think I might have met Connor in Belfast.
When would that have been?
Well, about 4 years ago, I was on tour in Belfast, and AC very kindly put me up, and I visited the very shop.
Oh, then you probably would have met Connor,
Forbidden Planet in Belfast, yeah. Nice.
He's a very nice man, as you've just heard.
He was a very nice man. Well, he still is, yeah.
He still is, yes, absolutely. As I mentioned before this interview, or before this part of the interview, the print run of Operation Sabre is currently sold out. I think there are 3 or 4 copies in the USA store if you want to get them from jerryanderson.store. However, Captain Scarlet will return in a digital edition. So keep an eye on the Jerry Anderson store, the Jerry Anderson website, and Comixology for that release in the next few weeks. Meanwhile, though, you can find Connor online on Twitter and Instagram as Flanavision.
Like it.
Because he's Flanagan, you see.
Like
but it's
it.
only
That's
one
very
N in Flanavision. Well, 2 N's in Flanavision. Flana Vision. There you go.
Okay, that's where the 2 N's are, I see. You mean not 2 N's together, don't you?
Yeah, 2 N's but apart.
That's right, okay.
Goodness me.
Quite complicated. More complicated than it needed to be, I think. But very good. Now, while we're on the subject of complicated things, if you do listen to the podcast, try and find on your app of choice where is the best place to hit any kind of subscribe or follow button to make sure that you get, that's it, that every notification every time a new episode drops. And also, do leave us a rating for heaven's sake. Now, that's the easy part. Just a few words and maybe a 5-star review would go down very well with us, because that means that the algorithms will put us to the top of lots of other people's lists and they might listen to us too. And finally, you could even copy and share the link to all your social media profiles. Let people know that you're listening to the Jerry Anderson podcast. Simples.
Please do that. Yeah. Or else. I mean, there's no or else threat, really.
Crikey, that's rather threatening.
It would be nice if it would.
Meanwhile, yes, over on Twitter, people have been hashtagging us. Me, Richard N. James. Him over there, I am Jamie Anderson. And him over there standing by the big red button for the randomizer, Chris Dalek, to tell us what they think about various things. Peach, for example, tweeted, "Happy days. I've just found the first 71 episodes of the Jerry Anderson podcast. Time for another binge listening session." That's good, isn't it? I wonder where they were hiding, under the sofa or something.
Probably, yeah. That's what happens with these things.
Yeah. Gary Hodgkinson says it's fun and it's free and certainly well worth a listen. It's the Jerry Anderson podcast. I mean,
Yes.
1 out of 3 ain't bad. We're certainly one of those things, aren't we?
We are. Thanks,
It's
Gareth.
free. I cannot. I mean, 208. Where are we? 226, 228. All free for you to enjoy.
Yes, I'm
That's-
just working out a rough running time.
Yeah, hour and a half for each of them. That's got to
Yeah.
be a year's worth, isn't it?
Well, that's
Back
what
to
I'm
back.
thinking. Divided by 60. Well, that's 342 hours.
Oh, I see. Yes,
We've
I was
done.
thinking days.
Yeah. The solid days, that's 14 and a quarter solid days of listening.
Right, there you go. All for free. Jim McCarthy says, excellent Jerry Anderson podcast. Oh, yes, he sent a link, or rather posted a link to the randomizer episode of UFO Identified. He says it goes into in-depth detail on the first UFO episode, identified some grisly elements, and we find out why the aliens have come to Earth. Yeah, well done, Chris Dale, on that episode. Graham Wood says, he posted some pictures from October 1978, Look In, which is a sort of a children's comic that used to come out once a week.
Yep.
Featuring Blondie, Benny Hill, Stu Pot, On the Ball, Steve Williams. How many of these do you remember? $6 Million Man, Enid Blyton's Famous Five, Smurfs, How the West Was Won, Jerry Anderson, The Bionic Woman, David Bellamy, and Mind Your Language. I mean, that takes me back.
What a list.
Absolutely. Vito posted, I'm a huge Jerry Anderson fan. I took my kid to see the Thunderbirds movie around 2010-ish. As the movie started, I got drowsy and told him, if anything happens, don't move. I fell asleep and woke up with the credits rolling. Right. Well, hey, maybe your son or child enjoyed it more than you did. Paula says, now, initially scheduled for 13 episodes, the Fox Kids edition of Thunderbirds was cancelled after 7. Despite this ratings crash, it still lasted longer than the UK Prime Minister, Liz Truss.
Ouch.
Right, there you go. That's the politics.
You've inserted
Overdone.
some politics, but yes, now it's over.
And finally, for now, Stainless Steel Haggis said the problem with today's kids is they're not watching any Jerry Anderson puppet shows. Well, we know they are, don't we, Jamie?
Yeah, they are.
That's the thing. Stainless Steel Haggists.
We get
The
emails
kids
about
are
it every
watching them
week.
and loving them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there you go. But do post your thoughts and pictures and random musings on Twitter. Hashtag us, and I'll read your tweets out next time.
Hurrah!
Hooray!
Another reason to say hooray is Chris Dale.
Oh, yeah.
Just his very presence makes us all go hooray and hurrah. And all
Hurrah,
that.
absolutely.
And huzzah, in fact. So
Huzzah.
Chris turns up every week to either press the button of the randomizer,
Yeah.
get someone else or something else to press the button
Yeah,
of
that's
the
it.
randomizer,
Yeah,
or find some other way of randomly choosing a Jerry Anderson episode.
Yes. Now, I know why you're doing that, but it's not quite as snappy, is it?
No, it's not. Anyway, he's here with the randomizer. He's going to choose a random episode.
That's it.
Should we just let him do it?
Yeah, go on.
Over to you, Chris.
Make it snappy.
Hello, Gay. Oh, is that the randomizer selection you've got there?
Yes, I think you'll find everything's in order.
Well, let's have a look. Oh my goodness, yes, this is a very good choice. Well, no time for a full introduction today, as we're heading back to the very beginning of Space 1999 for Breakaway.
Fine.
Well now, how appropriate it is that I am watching Breakaway on the randomizer on September 13th, 2022. That doesn't mean anything to you guys because you won't be hearing this until October. But hey-ho, it has been suggested that in previous years it could turn up on Breakaway Day and it hasn't. But it's here now, and I'm very excited because this is obviously a landmark episode, and it does feel like we haven't had too many proper landmark episodes on the randomizer.
We just passed through the laser barrier and we should be ready to start Dr. Russell's manual check on the radiation seals in a couple of minutes.
But here we are on the dark side of the moon, don't question it, at the nuclear monitoring station over Nuclear Waste Disposal Area 2 of Moonbase Alpha, a lunar research community built on the moon. We're here in the year 1999.
More from Area 2 monitoring.
Because somebody had very high hopes for the future.
When will you finish unloading?
But I've got to say, this opening is just...
I should think in about 10 minutes.
I mean, all the way through, this is a very nice looking episode in terms of not just the visuals, but the attention to detail in certain points throughout the base, and we'll come to that. But just the opening shot of the moon and the Earth and the sun, it's beautiful. It's just streets ahead of any of the space shots in UFO. And then you get the nuclear waste disposal area, and it's a very nice looking world, and more importantly, a very real looking world, a very believable world, straight away.
Schedule. Eagle 2 from Moonbase Alpha.
This feels like an inhabited world.
Commander Koenig, we'll be landing at Moonbase Alpha 23.
In a way that I'd say perhaps UFO didn't.
Coffee, Commander.
Thank you.
I've got Commissioner.
Check your chest, and off you go.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's it just feels so real, so believable, all this.
Well, your signed, sealed, and approved.
And here we have another interesting holdover from UFO. The idea of political intrigue, which obviously wasn't going to last very long into the series, unlike, say, the Straker and Henderson thing.
Your job is to put man on Meta.
But again, I love with the Anderson shows, we make these big, giant leaps into space. Yeah, we'll do that, but have you got the money to do that?
Shot of the planet Meta, taken from the unmanned
Here's
Spacefarer 9.
a rogue planet. Planet Meta.
Well, not only that, we're receiving signals loud and clear, relayed from the same probe.
Ooh.
There's no doubt about it.
It's a squiggly ring thing.
Would be supporting life as we know it. The Metaprobe astronaut virus infection mustn't be allowed to stop us. We must make a manned landing on Meta. Nothing must stop us. Nothing. Good luck.
So, planet Meta is approaching... Well, I don't know where it is exactly. It seems to be just a rogue planet. I don't know if it's happening to be passing by the Earth's solar system or what, but we've built a probe
Ship docking now.
to go out and investigate. Yes, another lovely model of the Metaprobe ship. And even more beautiful, that gorgeous space dock.
Looks good, but I'd like to see it on its way to Meta.
And of course, Shane Rimmer is the voice of the Eagle pilot there.
That's the lot, Professor.
Replacing scenes where Koenig was watching Simmons being interviewed about the Metaprobe, and I think Shane Rimmer was the interviewer. Because there are lots of reshoots for this episode. I mean, most scenes had some kind of reshoot, including this one. They had Michael Sheard there as the controller of the depot.
Get Nordstrom out of there. I think he's in trouble.
But even Michael Sheard would not be enough to save poor old Nordstrom, or Nordstorm.
Get out there and bring Nordstrom in.
As his helmet name implies.
He is in trouble.
But this stuff is just gorgeous. I love the lunar fight scenes in this series, even though,
Intensive care unit, please stand by. We have a casualty.
as we're about to get to, there's an unfortunate goof here. And you can also see the top of the set there, unfortunately. But no, it doesn't do anything to spoil my enjoyment and immersion of this wonderful world. And this unexpected moment of horror that suddenly thrusts into it as Nordstrom goes completely insane. One of his eyes goes opaque and then runs into the laser barrier. Don't know why that's there. Don't know who it's protecting the nuclear waste from on the dark side of the moon. Cracked his helmet visor open, and that's it. He dead. So we're back from the opening titles, and I've got to say, it's such an effective opening, that one. Everything seems all nice and normal and futuristic, and we've got some things going on, and then sudden madness, and it's quite scary. It's quite unsettling. At least I've always found it.
Final descent, Commander.
As I think I've mentioned before, I'm a bit of a sensitive child for such things. So seeing that moment, it was a bit, is this a bit too scary for me? Dunno. But it had that thing that I've heard people say about with Doctor Who, and I never quite had it with Doctor Who, outside of the early Pertwee stuff. But it was that thing of, this is scary, this is unsettling, but it's just scary enough that I am A, genuinely scared, but B, not too scared that I don't want to watch this. Anything with eyes, I think I've said before, is always unsettling for me. So to see the Nordstrom's eye suddenly go all weird and such, it's very, very unsettling even now. And here's a good example of where I think you can see evidence of the reshoots. The actress playing the stewardess on the Eagle as Koenig leaves is not the same one as who served him coffee earlier, whose chest he checked out. I think you can also see on the shelves there's various different things. So, here's Professor Victor Bergman. These two clearly know each other.
People are dying up here, John.
And it's not much fun up here at the moment.
The virus infection? The virus infection.
More to be discussed there. And here we go, we're going to meet the previous commander of Alpha. It's Philip Maddock.
Commander Koenig. Commander Gorski.
As Commander Anton Gorski.
I think we both know the situation. I imagine you'd want to be left alone to settle in. You have no doubt had a tedious journey.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what accent he's going
Over
for.
before I leave. I shall be in my quarters. Good luck.
I mean, Russian is a difficult accent to pull off, I know from experience. But, yeah, Russian, Welsh, I don't know.
I'm sure he'll survive.
Oh, I'm sure he will. He's always been very flexible.
Oh.
Commander!
And suddenly we're introduced to a whole flurry of characters. Even the extras
Hello, sir. How are you?
are introducing themselves. People we never hear speak again are talking here and introducing themselves. But again, I love that with this episode, they really take the time to make Alpha feel like a real lived-in place inhabited by real people. Those people out the front are not just extras. They are actual human beings.
Just don't know.
And there's so many extras in this episode, all of whom are doing so much in the background.
There is no radiation.
If you're like me and you're keen to watch what extras are doing in the background, this is a good episode to do that on. And you've even got things like, there's a woman on monitors in Main Mission, I think her name's Norma West, who's, I guess, delivering news reports or something, and the cameras are set up so that you can, from Main Mission, you can see what's going on in the external corridors. And on the composts, the clocks are moving in real time. It's so much attention to detail. Probably one of the reasons why this episode overran by about a month, and they had to do so many reshoots. But I don't think they could have sustained that level of production for the course of the series, but it's definitely lovely to see in this episode. Just so much attention to detail. And here we go. Introduction of Dr. Helena Russell.
Yes?
Dr. Russell.
And another clever shot. She answers Koenig, she sees him on her comlock, and then he walks in through the door for real.
John Koenig.
Commander?
And this room that Helena's in, I don't seem to recognise from later episodes. Is it her quarters? Not sure.
Pasteur and Madame Curie, right?
It's a replica. A college prize.
Ah. Well, let me just fiddle with this valuable piece of equipment. I'm sure you didn't have it set to any...
Metaprobe astronauts recover from this virus.
Ooh.
It's not a virus. What they have is an unusual form of brain damage. Their condition is critical.
And I love that Koenig comes in sort of half believing what Simmons has told him, and then he has to
go in to recover,
to piece it all together. Also an interesting piece of body language here.
What about the backup crew? Are they medically clear to fly this mission?
It's the way he suddenly folds his arms and says, huh? You don't know, do you? You don't know.
Before they were affected.
Doctor, you've had 11 cases so far.
9 deaths.
Yes, but all of those who died were workers at Nuclear Disposal Area 2.
Cheap, rehirable workers. Yeah, I gather the effects of radiation sickness and such, as depicted in this episode, are not quite how it goes down.
Never been recorded there. But what is consistent is that the probe astronauts and the backup crews have lived the same lives, been through the same training program.
Live the same lives? They all come from the same town, all these astronauts?
What I am saying is that the backup crew appears to be medically fit. But as a doctor, because of the unknown factors, I can't guarantee that they won't be affected 3 days or 3 months out into deep space.
And this is something I said before, quite recently actually, with Brian the Brain, that I love that Earth just has this long history of failed space missions.
Of course.
Everything that this planet has ever put up into space has gone wrong, basically, with the exception so far of the moon. But here we go. This is, again, going back to what I said about the scariness, the creepiness, but also this shows pessimism for humanity's place in the universe. And it's a beautifully chilling scene as we see Koenig looking at Warren and Sparkman in the isolation bay, this eerie blue light, and then we get this horrible, utterly horrible close-up on Sparkman's blind, scarred, diseased face. This guy, I'm not going to lie, I've seen him in my nightmares once or twice. And what makes it worse is there's some really horrible behind-the-scenes pictures of this actor playing Sparkman smiling, and it's just so chilling to see these photos of him smiling. It's like, I'm halfway between life and death. I have visited hell, and I would like to take you there. He's just, he's so creepy. Which is weird because I've recently become aware that he was in several Doctor Who's, including, ironically, the Moon Base, where he plays a Moon Base operative who does not contract a fatal virus that's sweeping the base, and he seems like quite a cheerful chap, a very pleasant fellow. And speaking of cheerful chaps, pleasant fellows...
Yeah, we can start the countdown as soon as you give the word.
It's Alan Carter! Alan, the man, the legend, Carter.
How long to get the backup crew ready?
Oh, 7 days.
7 days.
Backup crew? What do you mean?
And now he's about to completely change his mind.
Oh, we can't do it.
Can't do it.
Calculations, coordinates.
Other words beginning with C.
Not telling me about it. Captain, I'm here to get the Metaprobe launched. All I want to know is crew accepted, you're ready to go. Yeah, we're ready to go.
We don't have anyone to fly it, apparently, but yeah, we're ready to go. And I also love, I noticed this on A Force of Life not too long ago. I love that there's a stand of rocks in Koenig's office, and then later in Force of Life it was moved out into the corridor. That's great fun every time the base gets rocked by an explosion. But of course, these days, well, so far at this point in the series, there are no explosions. Everything's fine.
Well, how are you? I just wanted your first impressions of the situation.
And here's another point, as I said earlier about the clocks.
At the nuclear disposal.
You can see the clock there is set to 2:26.
A kind of brain damage.
We're going to see how that goes throughout the course of this scene.
Yes, I've heard all about
2:27?
theory from Gorski. No, she's a very competent doctor, John, in certain fields of space medicine, but she's wrong about this situation. Dead wrong.
And this sounds familiar, doesn't it? Politicians who know better than the experts about medical problems and such.
Before we do anything, I'd like to make sure there's no radiation leak at that disposal area.
Look here, those 2 Metaprobe astronauts didn't go anywhere near that area.
Simmons.
Eric Sparkman just took an unscheduled trip through the underworld via Pinhead and other scary, hellish things. My God, he's so freaky, that Sparkman. I can't get over it.
It's one of the biggest problems of our time.
Simmons, you assigned me up here to clear up...
And again, with the political stuff, we also have this ecological subtext to this as well. It's now 2:28. You see what I mean about how rewarding this episode is if you're really keeping track of the details of this world.
Probe launched. Deal?
This is a very nice looking shot of Koenig sort of telling Simmons off.
That's the best I can do.
But I can't quite picture what Simmons is seeing from his end. He must only sort of get Koenig's chin in shot.
Why did you lie to me?
You mean those men are no better?
They're not going to get any better, and you know it.
All right, just a minute, John.
And more financial intrigue.
The international...
And the idea that, these men's lives are secondary to this probe and getting the money to get it out there.
One hint of failure leaks out, they'll immediately abandon their support for our whole project. So just remember that.
Ole! I'm sorry. That is the gesture that Simmons makes when he's reaching up to turn off his screen, but it just looks like he raises his finger with such a flourish. It does look like he's saying, Ole! Oh, the clock is... stand down my time thing. The clock has gone completely screwy.
I'll need 2 volunteers.
I can't see what the hour is, but we're now at 53. So, let's go out to check those nuclear silos again. And one thing I love about this episode as well is the soundtrack, which does so much to reinforce this very doom-laden, heavy atmosphere. And in some bits, it's not even music. There's bits, particularly at the nuclear waste areas, you heard it at the start of the episode, just this rumbling. And that's all it is. It's not music, it's just this in the background.
Navigation beacon Delta. It's a landmark.
So unsettling. It's so just... It's very subtly unsettling. It sort of gets into your skin and sort of, plays on your nerves a bit.
There's no radiation, John. I've checked it out. Counts normal.
That was the first nuclear waste area up here. Has it been used since I left?
No, they've moved on to Area 2. This one hasn't been used for 5 years.
How's it holding up?
All right, according to reports. It's constantly monitored.
So, plot point here. Major plot point. Nuclear waste disposal area 1.
Let's move on to Area 2.
Yes, sir.
And up front, in the pilot seat, poor old Pilot Collins, he's got a bit of a facial twitch. Something wrong with his eye. I'm sure it's nothing. And I always find it odd watching this episode uncut, because the BBC, they sort of trimmed... They cut out the advert breaks on a lot of the episodes of Space 1999 that they showed, kind of just sort of smoothed over them, and that shot was always cut. It went straight from Collins having a problem with his eye to basically this shot. And again, it's such a weird shot because we're not seeing just the Eagle land on the pad, we're seeing it through a window of somewhere else in this monitoring station.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go. And in a nod, I don't know if it's a deliberate nod to UFO or not? I have to... Well, part of me wants to believe it is intentional. Part of me can't quite believe it. That we have two guys working out in the nuclear waste dumps at the moment, named Ellis and Jackson. Is that a deliberate homage to UFO? I would love to believe that it is, but I can't quite.
No leakage. We're going on to point 48.
And that is not the voice of the actor playing that character, by the way. That's actor Nick Zaran, who you'll recognise from various ITC things.
So far.
And this is creepy. It's not even just the music, it's the sound. The sound of that fabric on Colin's glove crumpling as he almost... he's unaware of what he's doing, raising his hand to his eye to rub it. He's still having problems with that eye. Yeah, Ellis and Jackson, I can't quite believe that they would do that deliberately. But it's a very nice, probably unintentional nod to the past. Of course, if there was any chance of people's brains melting in the world of UFO, I'm sure Jackson would be very interested
48 check complete.
to analyse that.
Normal. No leakage. That's it, sir. All okay out here.
And another unfortunate helmet goof coming up.
Now get out of there as fast as you can.
We had a visor flopping open earlier, and now we have someone's helmet basically flying off their shoulders as they leap into the moon buggy.
Seems to prove the radiation count here as well.
I don't know why this wouldn't have been reshot, but I guess they had so much to reshoot, they just thought, well, if we've got one scene done perfectly, let's move on. We've got 28 others to reshoot in a week.
The 9 men was not radiation.
Anyway, we've now established no radiation. Nuclear Waste Disposal Area 2.
Commander, I've got to get out of here.
Is it time to go home?
Now!
And again,
Commander, I'm getting out of here!
It's the idea of, I think I've said before, there was a video on the Jerry Anderson YouTube channel that I'm not sure is there anymore.
Kill us all!
That I did, about the scariest moments from Space 1999. I think I ranked this Metaprobe virus stuff as number 2. Because it's not just the eyes, and it's not just Sparkman generally, but it's the idea of sudden, unexpected and uncontrollable madness from someone you know. Just someone you know suddenly completely going insane.
Stunning!
And I just find it so... It is unsettling. Sorry, it is. I don't mean to sound like a wuss. I know I am a wuss. But if anyone else finds this whole virus thing unsettling and scary, or did at the time, I should say, please let me know. I hope I'm not the only one. But there we go, we had our first, close call with death for Koenig and Bergman there, as they only just managed to get, what's his name, Collins, out of the monitoring room before the window that he tried to break down actually exploded and sucked out all the air.
Recorded information on the training flights of the probe astronauts. I'd like to check...
Although, knowing what happened to Sparkman and Warren, he probably would have been better off just left in there and had a quick death. Because right now, his brain is probably liquefying in his skull. Oh dear, poor old Collins. And another nice touch here.
Russell?
Where Koenig calls for...
Commander, Dr. Matthias.
Dr. Russell, and there isn't an instant reply. You have to have...
Frank Warren died at 1328.
The person that he wants to talk to walk into frame, as they would do in real life. Several examples of that again in this episode.
Now.
And let's check in on Freak Man. Oh, hell zombie of my nightmares. My God. Sparkman. Go away, you weird freaky man. And it does lend something to the tragedy of this situation.
By that last report.
Stage 5 mutation complete.
Because I do love that with this show. I think I meant to say this earlier and didn't, regarding this show's view of humanity and its place in the universe. Warren and Sparkman were meant to be...
Astronaut Eric Sparkman, deceased.
You know, these great space explorers, these pioneers on this big adventure into the unknown to discover this new planet, and ultimately they just end up mindless zombie-like vegetables, not really able to do anything or go anywhere except, well, die, as Helena finally turns off Sparkman's life support and puts him out of his misery. Odd that she doesn't feel she needs to check with the family, though. But hey-ho, I guess she's been authorised to do it.
They died. Of what? I mean, I was told... You were told lies. They died of an illness no one can understand.
I also like the sort of implication here that Carter is not
It was a temporary setback.
as much of a part of the command structure of Alpha as he later would be.
Forget the probe, Carter.
This seems almost like he's been called up just to supervise the metaprobe, and that's all. He's very much out of the loop, which I like, but I also like that he's very quickly established as, he's not Captain Carter, head of the metaprobe, he's Alan Carter, bloomin' great hero guy.
Make a manned landing on Meta.
And this is Koenig's quarters, again with lots of rocks and shells and things all over the place.
I can't guarantee that they won't be affected 3 days.
Did he bring those up with him? He didn't seem to have much baggage.
Now your job is to put man on Meta.
The giant leap for mankind. It's beginning to look like a stumble in the dark.
That's a lovely line. So many lovely little bits of dialogue in this episode.
Eagle, flown by Eric and Frank on their last training.
And we should probably talk about this guy, actually. This is Benjamin Uma, played by Lon Saturn.
Just like that.
Who only appears in this first episode, and then for the subsequent 23 episodes of the first series, was his job was filled by actor Clifton Jones as David Kano.
Waste disposal on Area 1.
And I gather that Lon Saturn was let go because he was a bit problematic to work with. Don't know the extent of that.
10 on Area 1, please, and bring it in.
Yes, Paul.
Again, Sandra doesn't seem to be a part of the main mission crew at this point either. She seems to be kept in a room off to the side of main mission, which is strange.
It's a turning point, right? It's one of the few constructions on the dark side.
And that was also one of the early titles for what eventually became Breakaway.
Training flights over on the dark side, away from Alpha traffic.
Yeah, I don't know how many people feel about the idea of Uma having carried on with the series. I think I much prefer Kano.
Out on their last training flight.
Kano, even though he's not the show's greatest character, there is more warmth and humanity there than you have with Uma.
Levels in disposal area 1. This is impossible.
He's quite a sort of fussy, almost stuffy character at times.
Normal, but the heat continues.
But when he's needed for like action and sort of heroic stuff, he can do it. He rarely got to do it. So yeah, I think on the whole, I much preferred Kano to Uma. But, maybe had Lon Saturn not got himself into trouble and stuck around, I might be saying, hey, really like that Uma guy. It's hard to tell from just one episode.
Heat, but still no radiation.
Heat without atomic activity.
Oh, but now Nuclear Waste Disposal Area 1 is, it's glowing, and there's bits of electricity shooting out all over the place. But there are certain episodes in the Anderson universe where I would have loved to have the experience of seeing it as it was first broadcast. This must have been unlike anything else ever seen on television up to that point.
An eagle on the pad for immediate lift.
With the exception of other Anderson shows. But I think one of the strengths of a lot of the Anderson shows, particularly Thunderbirds, is that these feel like movies produced for television.
Approaching Area 1.
That aren't aware they are not going to be shown on huge cinema screens, because the money is there, the visual glossy look is there. So this is definitely a very cinematic, epic, just in terms of the visuals, episode. Yeah. But then I can say that about all sorts of things, really. I went to the cinema a few weeks ago to watch The Wrath of Khan, and I can never watch that film the way that people did when it was first shown. They didn't know that Spock would be coming back. I've had that knowledge for as long as I've been a Star Trek fan. So it's just,
It feels expanding. We can't measure it. Get him away.
You make the best of the time you were born in, and you appreciate what you have, and I'm very lucky now that I live in an age where I've got basically everything. Every Anderson stuff. All of the Anderson stuffs. In lovely HD for the most part.
All systems out.
And here we go, our first Eagle crash.
Rescue ship moving.
More evidence of possible reshoots here, because if you notice Koenig's the neck part on his spacesuit, it sort of changes between it's flat in one shot and then it's ribbed in another.
10 seconds.
And as Eagle crashes go, although this is the first one in the series, so it's a bit of a landmark, it's fairly underwhelming, this one. But again, I suppose that's just because I'm comparing it with all those other wonderful Eagle crashes that I saw throughout the rest of the series. This one's a bit lower key. But there we go. Nuclear waste, Area 1. It's a fairly major fireball. It's more implied, though, that the whole area has gone up. It's not quite the massive explosion that we'll see later on with Area 2, but it's still some very nice visuals and effects stuff there. And an unusual shot of the base, too. I don't think we see that again, because obviously it's got the moon in the background.
Well, I told you there was nothing wrong with me. I walked away from there. There was no damage.
Commander.
Oh, it's 4:10 according to the clock now.
That is not the kind of damage I'm looking for.
And this is a nice setup for the
You knew that it all...
Well, it lays the groundwork for the relationship between our two main characters to follow.
And yet you went right out there yourself.
Very soft focus on Bane here, though.
We're looking for answers, Commander. Not heroes.
Oh, nice line.
I didn't know you cared.
Point. Yes, I think he scored the point there. And again, another soft focus shot of Bane, looking a bit confused.
Look at this. It's a monitoring device from the old...
I don't know what room this is. Is this... Well, it's obviously a room over the Eagle Hangar, but I don't think we ever see anyone in here again. And yet there are so many people milling around.
Record for 5 years, but now look at it.
Various extras that we do see again throughout the show's run, but there's a technical guy named Young. I don't recall seeing him again, except in stock footage from Force of Life. He makes a return there.
This instrument's given me a lead. I think we're facing a new effect, arising from the atomic waste deposited here over the years.
So they've recovered this from Area 1.
Unprecedented violence.
Magnetic energy responsible for the flare-up at Area 1.
Magnetic energy causing brain damage?
Yeah, let's go with it. I don't know how the science of this is in any way accurate. I suspect it is largely inaccurate. But it's,
Probe astronauts flew over there daily.
It seems to work for this show.
As did Collins and the shuttle.
And we've all been exposed to it. We've all been to Area 2, and to get there, we turn over Area 1.
And that's a subtle bit of horror that never really comes into play afterwards.
There's an even bigger problem I see looming up. Area 1.
We've all potentially got our brains waiting to melt in our skulls.
What worries me now is that the same thing could happen in Area 2.
Oh, another firestorm.
What time do we have?
We need solid data on magnetic...
Hope it has a good theme tune.
I won't be responsible for any more men out on the surface in these conditions.
Neither will I.
So let's ask for more volunteers, and not tell them.
Under magnetic levels, and do it by remote control.
Oh yeah, we've got more Eagles to send in. Again, I think this is a more effective Eagle crash, which is ironic considering there's no one at the controls. But it's, something interesting, and not something the show did all that often. Send in an unmanned Eagle operated by remote. They would have saved so many pilots if they'd done this more often. Also a bit of a touch of an Eagle under the control of the Mysterons there, seeing the controls move by themselves. And a lovely touch, again...
Hold that, Paul.
You'd expect it to be there. I think it's just familiarity with the remainder of the series that it looks so odd to see the Earth outside the windows in Main Mission.
Magnetic field 0.
Okay, Paul, set her down. Right, Commander.
And, you may argue that this episode doesn't do a huge job in establishing many of the characters outside of the central three, and to a certain extent Alan Carter as well. But there's so much going on here that I think you can sort of, for this episode at least, just say, we'll get to all that later. But of course,
Out of there, Paul.
Famously, the first cut of this episode was like 2.5 hours long, and they had to do various rewrites and reshoots, and I would have to assume a lot of character stuff ended up on the cutting room floor. Particularly, I know there was more stuff with Gorski. There was another meeting between him and Koenig where he did take him up on that offer if you want to talk things over before I leave. And a bit of a hint that he was interested in Helena as well.
The surge. The magnetic surge.
So, Area 2 is going the same way as Area 1, but with a lot more stuff in there.
Contact Commissioner Simmons immediately.
It could be a bigger bang.
That's emergency code Alpha 1. Yes, sir.
Oh, emergency code Alpha 1, serious stuff.
You're right, Doctor. It was radiation. Magnetic radiation. Now we're sitting on the biggest bomb man's ever made.
Oh dear. And I feel for Koenig here as well. I mean, I kind of feel for him throughout the whole series, really. This is a guy who was sent up essentially to take charge of a rubbish dump, who ultimately ends up being responsible for what could be the last of humanity. But it's just, he's inherited a situation, a problem here, which is a long-term problem for which there is basically no solution. Whatever, throughout their best efforts in this episode, there is nothing they can do to stop the inevitable. And I find that a very understated element of this story and quite fascinating. But here we go. The passing of Emergency Code Alpha 1 has brought Commissioner Simmons to Alpha in uniform.
Commissioner?
Give him a comlock. I'm sure he won't do any naughty things with that.
My office tried to query you about your emergency code Alpha 1. You didn't seem to be available.
I am now.
That's a very nice shot of the Eagle wreck in Area 2 there as well.
Now, it contains 140 times the amount of waste in Area 1. With quantities like that, there could be a chain reaction.
What are the chances it could burn itself out, like Area 1?
Simmons.
I also like that Victor is trying to explain it to Simmons in nice, reasonable terms, and Simmons is like, will the easy option happen again?
You can
try and break the pile apart, rip up the rods, destroy the mass. If we could disperse the mass over a wider area.
All right. Come on, let's do it.
We do have limited time.
There's that noise. There's that unsettling. Oh, it's not music, it's just atmosphere and dread. Wonderful stuff. And of course, here we get our first flurry of Eagles. A lot of them using those winch pods, all manned by very expendable extras. I do love the look of these winch Eagles, though. And it demonstrates as well, quite effectively, the versatility of the Eagle as a spacecraft, and the idea of the interchangeable pods, essentially. Just lovely stuff.
They're moving into the area now.
All right, Paul, I'll be right with you.
So it seems to be 8:42 on the clock now. Another gorgeous shot as Koenig opens the doors onto main mission. It's just, wow. Here's a room that, we could hold a football match in. It's just brilliant. Have we got enough space here? Oh dear. So many extras as well, milling around doing various things, and some gorgeous shots of Eagles pulling away the protective covers over the nuclear waste silos. And a lot of, again, going back to the real worldness of this and the atmosphere, stuff you're not even consciously aware of, but a lot of background chatter, specifically relating to what is going on here.
4, this is Eagle 1-4. I'm getting a bit of flicker on the navigation system. We'll check it out from here.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this scene. It's very nice.
Number 26, disperse to grid C9.
And this is fun.
Repeat, disperse to grid C9.
The two pilots, they look at each other as if to say, oh, C9, oh, you really want to go there? I don't want to go there, no. Pretend we didn't hear him. I don't know what's going on. What's wrong with grid C9? Hey-ho. I would say, just a minor point against this, though, we don't really get a sense of scale regarding the size of Nuclear Area 2. It seems to me like Nuclear Area 1 was much larger.
So they're all committed.
But we're told that it has 140 times more nuclear waste in there, so then it must have been more efficiently stored at a greater depth, I suppose.
That's what worries me.
Creates a problem.
I think we should go up another 100, Commander.
Oh, you do you? Well, who are you, unnamed man over the radio? You don't tell me what to do. Maybe if Koenig had listened to that man,
Go ahead, one.
things might have turned out very differently. I don't think so.
Get it and programmed. I will be in orbit in 4 minutes.
Yes. Interesting as well, Koenig sends Alan up into orbit just to keep an eye on how things look. I would imagine when you're that high, you can't really see what's going on over Nuclear Waste Area 2 unless something goes catastrophically wrong, in which case you'd know about it anyway.
You think we have it under control, John?
Too early to tell.
I do like Simmons very prematurely declaring victory here.
Well done. Now,
and the venom and the anger that Koenig retorts to that with.
You see, John,
I see men risking their lives to avert disaster, total disaster. If this goes wrong, there won't be anybody to issue a communique. There will be no survivors.
It would almost be interesting to see how their relationship would have continued from that point had this operation been a success, which of course it wasn't. You can hear in the background that it wasn't. But I would imagine Simmons wouldn't have let Koenig stay in command for very long with that attitude.
Fourth mission. Main mission to all Eagles. Return to base immediately.
And we're just coming up on basically special effects porn at this point. Just explosions everywhere. And okay, you can see one or two wires, one or two little moments. But it's just, they sell this so effectively, the idea of just everything blowing up. even things that don't seem to have any relation to Nuclear Waste Disposal Area 2. And then finally the whole sorry silo goes up. I hope they got Michael Sheard out of there before that happened. And just iconic shot after iconic shot. Particularly that explosion over the moon. And again, all these extras throwing themselves around the place. I also get the feeling this was a scene where there's so much more shot than we actually see. I gather there was, in fact, the guy who played Steiner, I think he did a stunt fall off the top of the main mission balcony. And also, there's another stuntman who's been hanging around the place all episode. He's the one who falls back against the staircase to the upper level. I think there was some kind of shot of him being actually thrown across the room.
G-Force! We're moving!
And a beautiful close-up on the space dock as it spins out of orbit. This is such a beautiful model. And I'm so glad they saved it and reused it later in Dragon's Domain. But that close-up of it spinning is just gorgeous. It's a lovely model. There goes the probe, there goes an Eagle, and there goes the space station. And again, I'm not sure about the science of what would happen to Carter's Eagle while he's in orbit and the moon is going out of orbit, of the Earth. But what I love here is that...
Out of the Earth's orbit.
And I think it's maybe mentioned in a novelization or something, that Carter at this point has the opportunity to go back to Earth. He's the only one who has the choice.
Are you okay?
And he chooses Alpha. It's not overtly stated on screen, but it's a very nice aspect to the character. And we're coming up on something here that I find really interesting to watch this in HD. Because everyone's pinned on the floor of main mission at this point, and the pressure is so great that only one man can drag himself to the radio, and that's Commander Koenig, of course.
What's happening to you down there?
And you can see as he drags himself up the side of a desk to reach the radio at the top of the desk, you can see on Blu-ray Martin Landau's fingerprints on the edge of the desk from what must be a previous take. It's... I don't know how visible it is on DVD. It might be very visible, but I love it. It's a nice little glimpse into the fact that they probably had to do this several times.
We are moving away from Earth!
It's a very undignified scene for everybody on the floor, sort of heaving and groaning.
Carter, can you hear me?
And of course, Koenig was the only one who could get to a radio.
You're okay. What's happening down there?
We've got tremendous G-forces. We can hardly move.
Doesn't really sound like Landau's voice at that point, though.
Good. We seem to be decelerating.
Hey, we're slowing down. Because I think science has gone out the window at this point, obviously. It's one of the main sticks that people like to use to hit this series with. Unfortunately, because they're not aware that, mysterious unknown force and all that. And again, I know I've gone on about it, but the world they've created in this episode, I mentioned earlier, the lady on the screen in main mission who's delivering some kind of news reports,
out of orbit.
She's obviously been knocked around and she's still on camera. All of the extras are just utterly done in. Even the camera that I mentioned looking onto the corridor outside main mission is now at a wonky angle.
Can you make it back to the base? I can make it.
I'm a big damn hero and you're gonna need me.
This is main mission. All sections report.
Yeah, you can see that. Oh, yes. This shot here, where Helena starts tending to the wounded, you can see Steiner on the floor from where he had his fall that he didn't have.
Sufficiently operational to accept casualties.
And also that guy who I said got pulled into the staircase. You can just see in one shot what must be some kind of rig or whatever he was used or tied to pull him back into the stairs. It's a sort of wood thing with some rope on it. But this is a very haunting image. Just the moon drifting off into infinity. And everybody just looking a bit shell-shocked. This is the point where I would say, maybe one or two people should be a bit, tearful.
Can we make it back to Earth?
I can't watch that moment without thinking of the IGN edition. I don't know if you're familiar with that trailer. Someone cut together a DVD release trailer for a DVD release that would never happen, and it got increasingly jokey as it went along, and it said there was an alternate ending to Breakaway where Paul says, "Can we make it back to Earth?" and they just cut in Koenig saying yes, and then played happy music, and that was it. But oh dear,
Moon on unknown trajectory.
it's just bad news after bad news here.
Is due to Moon's movement away from Earth.
And it would have been interesting if, I know Koenig makes the call in a moment that they're not going to try to escape and head back to Earth, but it might have been interesting, a sort of parallel universe type story, just to see how that operation might have gone down.
Human decision required.
Oh dear, it all falls on the shoulders of one man. And yeah, speaking of a continuation of this episode, because this episode does set up certain things that are never called back to, specifically meta, but there is somewhere out there online, and I don't often recommend fan fiction, but this is quite a fun one. There's Breakaway Part 2. I don't know where you'd find it, I don't know who wrote it, but it was essentially a Part 2 to this episode that dealt with the immediate fallout from what's happened here, what happened to Uma, why they didn't end up going to Meta, and Simmons attempting to lead a mutiny to take them back to Earth. And it's all very believable stuff. If you can find it, it's well worth a read. And Carter's back. Quick thumbs up with Bergman. Yeah, we're all right.
Attention all sections Alpha.
And you really do feel the weight on Koenig's shoulders as this speech is made.
As you know, our moon has been blasted out of orbit.
Oh, really? I didn't know. There's probably someone in bed, actually, somewhere on the base thinking, oh, what the hell's happened?
If we should try to improvise a return to Earth without full resources...
I think they seem to have given up on the clocks at this point. It's 2023, and it seems to have been that way for quite a while.
Therefore, in my judgment, we do not try.
Oh. Yeah, Landau does a very good job here, selling the weight and gravity of this moment. Other people in Main Mission are sort of more resigned to the idea of sort of, oh well, that sucks. But I just think if this was done now, you would get certain people
accident
just weeping hysterically and uncontrollably.
Has caused very serious repercussions.
Everyone's a bit too willing to go along with what Koenig says, I think.
The earthquakes in the United States along the San Andreas...
But this is a nice touch, though. Our last glimpse of life on Earth, and it does not sound pretty.
To life and property.
It was interesting, actually, getting the Spazio 1999 Blu-ray from Network recently and watching the Italian translation or the English translation of the Italian, I should say, and they make life on Earth sound even worse than it does here. Like, Los Angeles is being rained on by millions of dead fish and that kind of thing. It's just...
It was thought a rescue might have been attempted.
Horrific.
Space docked until that, too, was hurled out of orbit.
And then went kablooey.
The moon's acceleration away from Earth has put it beyond the reach of any Earth.
That's it. All gone, and everyone looks at Koenig.
All frequencies for any signal from Earth, anything.
What you gonna do now, hero? And I also find it interesting that we have a planet named Meta. Because I think in the 21st century that word has sort of taken on a slightly different meaning in terms of fiction and shows and things, saying, oh yeah, that's a very sort of meta take on this concept. You know, it's come to sort of mean self-aware almost, I think. So when they get the signal here, that meta signal, and then Bergman confirms,
it's meta.
It just sounds so sort of almost like the show is commenting on itself somehow. But again, it only sounds like that for us in the 21st century. And of course, you know, I certainly believe that is that's not related to Meta at all. That is, of course,
our future lies.
Sandra in the future, sending her message back to the past. That's a lovely, lovely end to the show, message from Moonbase Alpha, and it's great that it ties so heavily into the events of the first story, because ultimately we never went anywhere near Meta. Quite strange that they would end the episode with such a strong hint that they would be.
September 13, 1999. Meta signals increasing. Yes. Maybe there.
But maybe not. And there we go. That was Breakaway, the first episode of Space 1999. And oh my goodness, that is just one of the absolute highlights, not only of the show, but of the whole Anderson canon. Just... The story concept itself is wonderful, so the fact that it's realised in such a realistic and doom-laden way, ultimately leading up to this wonderful special effects extravaganza at the end. It's a brilliant setup to my absolute all-time favourite Anderson series. I can never get enough of seeing this episode. Happy Breakaway Day, everybody, for October.
There you go. Now we're talking.
Breakaway. Yes, yeah.
Now we're talking.
Bit of a classic.
I can't tell you how long I've waited for that episode to come on the randomizer. Well, I can actually. 227 podcasts.
How annoying that this is the one situation where you can't actually use that phrase. I can't tell you how long I've... I actually can.
I can.
Almost to the minute. In fact, you've been waiting 14.25 days of content.
Which isn't very long, actually, is it?
No. But you've waited in between all the episodes.
I've waited just over a fortnight for that to come up on the randomizer.
Only in podcast time. Anyway.
That's right.
Rather nice to have a bit of Space 1999 there.
Oh.
And do you think that's a sort of... I was going to say premonition again. I keep saying that word. I don't mean that.
Yes, go on.
But it sort of leads us nicely into scary things that might be coming up in our future. Ooh.
Does it?
Yes, because it's Halloween next week, isn't it? It's Halloween.
That's a rather tenuous link.
Well, sometimes a tenuous link is all we've got, so
that's true. Yeah.
I'm sticking with it.
Okay, I'll go with it. Yeah, fine. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, that's time,
Halloween
isn't
next
it?
Week, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. He'll be back at the randomizer next week, and we'll be back with more Jerry Anderson podcast next week because that is what we do. Is what?
Yes.
What's the problem?
Well, here's the thing. If it's Halloween next week, I challenge our wonderful Podstrons.
Yes.
If you got hold of a Zelda mask in the last few months, put it on, take a picture, post it on Twitter and hashtag us, put it in the Facebook group. I want to see you in your Zelda mask for Halloween.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfect content for audio. Halloween dress up, isn't it? So.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I'm just trying to sort of, encourage a sense of community.
Oh yeah. No, that's very good.
Right?
It's very good. Yes, yeah. Anyway, please do that. If you're not on the Facebook group, you'd like to email us a picture of you in your Halloween get-up. Hopefully, make it Anderson-y. Email it to podcast@jerryanderson.com or tweet us. Use the hashtag JerryAndersonPodcast. Tweet him, Richard N. James, him over there, Chris Dalek, or me. I'm Jamie Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny when I do that.
Yeah,
I mean, not funny, haha. It's funny, peculiar.
No, I'm beginning to like it.
I'm still on the fence.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, let's wrap this thing up. We'll be back with Pod 229 next week for a spooky edition of the Jerry Anderson podcast. It probably won't be spooky at all. Don't even bother with that.
It won't be spooky.
It'll be probably a bit normal one, but
all right. We'll just mention that it's Halloween.
Exactly. That's the secret. Done. Agreed. Right. See you next week for the Halloween edition.
All right. See you then.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
It's a bit breezy in there, is it? Is that wind?
No, I was just, I think oh, hang on. There you go, I've just shut the door now. That's better. How's that?
I wonder what that creak was.
Yeah.
It's been a long day. A bit stiff, are you?
You thought it was my back, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Well, that wasn't me commenting on you being elderly, I promise.
No, how dare you? Are you doing anything for Halloween? I mean, we don't really take it that seriously anymore.
Well, I've never taken it seriously. I have got a party invite, which is very unusual for me. I don't normally get invited to anything, really.
No.
So,
Not since the last time. You're one of those people that often get invited to parties, but only once.
Yes. Anyway, that's that. It might be a good opportunity for me to wear my Zelda mask, you see, but then I'll have to find an appropriate dress to go with it.
Yeah, right. Yes,
a sort of kind of weird peri-Victorian nightie.
Yes.
That
Are you
she
sure you
has
haven't
on.
got one of those tucked away somewhere?
I'll go and have a look.
I mean, I'm currently rehearsing a Victorian murder mystery. I'm sure I could dig out something from the the wardrobe store.
If you wouldn't mind, I'll
you go.
swing by Marylebone and grab one on my way to said party. Brilliant.
Okay, yeah, I can do that for you.
Fantastic.
Right.
I'll be the one in the Zelda mask.
Okay, all right. Spook to you later then.
Oh, nice. Bye.
Oh, bye.
You have been listening to the Jerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.